are listening to the Savage FINcast, Episode 16, Grandfather of Image Comics.
Chicago. A criminal mastermind called Overlord held our city in his terrifying grip. Ordinary cops were losing the battle against Overlord's super freaks and mutants. Then, a miracle happened. When I found him, he had no memory of his past. I helped him find an identity and a life. Now we have a fighting chance. Now we have the dragon.
This is the Savage FINcast, coming at you again for our 16th consecutive time. Well, I say 16th, it's probably more like the 18th, because we did have those 2 episodes in the middle there. And now I'm rambling. I'm Jim Purcell.
I'm Craig Olson.
I'm Adam Pruitt.
And we're here again. We got a very special episode lined up. We've got a special guest again. Got another interview like we said we might do next time, and we came through for once. We're gonna have Gary Carlson on the show, who you probably know if you are a fan of Savage Dragon, is the creator of the character Vanguard and the writer of most of Vanguard's adventures. But we'll get to that later.
If you're not a fan of Savage Dragon, I don't know why you're listening to this.
It's a very good question.
I'm just kidding.
But before we get into that, let's talk about some Erik Larsen news. Take it away, Adam.
Ant, the guy that created Ant, Mario Gully, who was slated to draw an issue. We talked about this with Erik when he was on. Before Erik launches his new Ant series, they were going to do one where Mario was going to basically draw the conclusion to his old Ant series and sort of wrap up the book. And that's not going to be happening now. The book's been basically... Mario was posting some pencil pages that he'd done, and he'd gone pretty significantly off script. And there was a specific scene that was a little bit hypersexual, and the problem was that this would mean that retailers would be treating this as a mature book when it was an all-ages book, and Erik's book was going to be an all-ages book. And anyway, they had a bit of a disagreement over it, and they eventually just decided, Mario wanted to do this thing, and Erik wanted to do his thing, so they decided to part ways, and it was mutual, despite what may be inferred on Bleeding Cool or other such sites like that.
Yeah, Bleeding Cool kind of ran with that story, and it got kind of crazy.
It's not really like as crazy as they said it is, but you have to appreciate like the situation too of like Mario Gully his position is, this is my character and, I want to do it my way, but like sucks because
it's
Erik, like, it's not his character anymore, and so I can appreciate it's a difficult or uncomfortable position to be in, to have like you've purchased this other person's character and you're telling them like
what to do with it.
Yeah, but like to his credit too, Erik's being like accused of censoring Mario. The reality is Mario was changing what was laid down, and they sort of already previously agreed upon, and
So really, he's censoring
unfortunate
Erik.
situation. Yeah, I guess you could say that, and it's kind of an unfortunate situation. I would have liked to have seen Mario's last issue, but it is what it is, and I don't think they have any hard feelings. So
I think it's good in a way. I mean, it's well, first of all, to touch on what you talked about, Erik invested probably a good chunk of money in this character. So if he has a game plan, he's put the money down. He's got to do what he thinks is best to make this investment work. So
Mario was in a tough spot, and he decided to sell his character. And Erik had liked the character and thought that there were things that could be done with it, and he helped him out. And he's got a different I think he's got, his idea of where he wants it to go, and they weren't seeing eye to eye on that. And
Right.
as happens with books all the time, they just had kind of creative differences, and so that book's not happening.
I think Erik was being just kind of like the nice guy. Hey, you can conclude your series and get closure. But I think in the long run, if it would have went through and Gully would have concluded, Ant with issue 12 of volume 2 when it was also at volume 3 at, another publisher, it just would have been all confusing. And then for Erik to come out with a new Ant 1, I think this is almost a blessing in disguise for the book. I think, Erik was just being a nice guy, and I think it would have hurt the book to kind of, it would have just been confusing. So I personally think it's good for Erik just to kind of come out with a number 1, a new direction. It's been how many years since, issue 11 of the second volume through Image came out. It would just be weird.
Now, I don't know Ant from anything because it was one of those series I sort of ignored when it was getting some buzz. But was the initial 11 issue Image series an all ages series? I got the impression that it was not so much.
It was, skewing older. But not. It was not pornographic.
Okay.
As much as like Savage Dragons, like all ages in some points, it's. Well, there was violence and there was some. Yeah. It definitely wasn't like a G-rated book, but there was some. Sexuality in it.
It definitely wasn't X-rated, either.
Yeah.
So.
But if you saw this page that
I'm not sure.
Mario
I saw
posted,
the page. I don't think I'd call it X-rated, but
it's not X-rated.
But it would require
a mature reader's label.
Right, retailers would think of it as X-rated because of all of the baggage that just having a one panel like that brings along.
Right,
and so it may as well be full on porn at that point.
It was like really, in my opinion, it was kind of really unnecessary. But whatever.
Yeah, I get that.
So yeah, that's that. It's a
So just to be clear to our audience, the 12th issue of the original series will not be created, but Erik is still going ahead with his interpretation of the character.
It's not even the original series. I think there's to date it's like 3 volumes. I think Mario was supposed to give closure to the Image kind of series, which ran 11 issues. He was going to do the 12th, and now that's not going to happen.
Right.
So I suppose we will move on to the main feature of our episode. All right, we are excited to have Gary Carlson on the show. Gary is known for being the creator and publisher of the Megaton Comics Anthology series, which introduced many new comic book talents, which included Erik Larsen, Rob Liefeld, and Angel Medina. Gary is the co-creator of Vanguard and has collaborated with Larsen on various properties, including the 23-issue run of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from Image Comics back in the 90s, as well as Big Two books such as Nova and Aquaman. Gary is known for being a co-creator of the Big Bang comic book line. Good to have you on the show, Gary.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
So, Gary, we thought we would just start and ask you, real basic, like, how did you get into comics, and what led to you starting up Megaton and that kind of stuff? Were you a big comic fan when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah. I've been reading comics since before I was 5, I think. My brother was 3 years older than I was, and he and his friends read them, and I just kind of got into it when I was, 5 years old. I think there's pictures I drew in kindergarten of I don't know who, if it was the Atom or Batman or whatever. But yeah, by 6, 7 years old, I'm an old guy. I'm just about 56 now, so I've been reading since 62, 63, and I was trading comics with my brother's friends. Old stuff from the 50s, it was all DC stuff, Giants and whatever. So yeah, I've been reading forever.
So do you remember? I mean, you say you're a big DC guy, but do you remember like Marvel in the early '60s when it was just coming around with Spider-Man on the scene and the Fantastic Four and all those Kirby creations, or were you more just DC?
I was a DC guy. I first became aware of the Marvel stuff in a used bookstore, probably when I was in 3rd or 4th grade. We had moved, and I must have just ignored them on the stands because I don't really remember seeing Marvel comics until, like I said, in a used bookstore, and they didn't have really many back issues of DC stuff, but that's where I first I came across. They had Avengers 3, 4, and a couple other ones, and some early Fantastic Fours, and I only had a couple of bucks, and it was, what do I pick up? I mean, I'm sure they were pretty cheap, I mean,
Yeah.
probably 50 cents or something, but it's like I just had to make a choice and went for the Avengers books. And
Gotcha.
that was my introduction to Marvel right there. I mean, after that I started picking them up, but first couple years, it was strictly DC, and even then I was mostly a DC guy, probably through the end of the 60s, I would guess.
And so, like, as a kid, in your head, did you always want to like kind of write comics or get into the industry, or was that something that just kind of later on?
No, I loved comics. I think I wanted to be a comic strip artist. The Sunday Funnies appealed to me. I think I somewhere along the line I must have seen the movie How to Murder Your Wife with Jack Lemmon, and he was a syndicated cartoonist in there, and I thought that's the lifestyle for me. And I mean, back then, I mean, Flash Gordon and in the Sunday Funnies, there were just tons of papers. Chicago had 4 papers back then, and there was just Prince Valiant and Flash Gordon, and then all the funny stuff. That was me. I mean, I was a big fan of comic books, but I wanted to be a cartoonist, a syndicated cartoonist.
Yeah, I think people forget that, you don't have it as much today. I mean, especially since papers don't sell like they used to, but there was a lot more serialized kind of stories, straightforward stories, not just the funny stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Steve Roper and Mary Worth and all that stuff, which that's not necessarily what I wanted to do. I gravitated toward old Flash Gordon and whatever, but I was a Bigfoot kind of guy. So
yeah. So I know you started Megaton around 81. How old were you when you started that, and did you finance that all of yourself, and how did you find the guys that contributed to
Yeah, I financed it all out of my own pocket. Let's see, I was born in 57, so what is that, 67, 77,
like 23 or
25, yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah, I was working, I had a little bit of disposable income, and I fell into it, really. I didn't really have any plans for it, but I was going to comic cons at that point, and there were just a lot of guys trying to break in, and it seemed like a closed market at that point, and I kept running into guys whose stuff that I loved, and they were all saying the same thing: I can't get work,
Yeah,
and, somewhere along the line, I was talking with Butch Geis, and it just occurred to me. I was like, gee, all this talent, somebody could start a company and compete right off the bat. And somehow I asked if he'd be interested in drawing a story for me, and he said, yeah. And just like that, I was a publisher. I didn't have anything to show him. I'm not even sure if I had any idea of what I was going to have him draw at that point, but I had him committed for that story, and then I was like, well, I'm gonna need other material for the book, so that's where I got to work. And him I met at, I imagine it had to be a Chicago con. No, did I say Butch Guys? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was Mike Gustovich that set the whole ball rolling. I was a big fan of his. He was doing the Power Comics stuff, and this was probably before Justice Machine even, although I'm not sure about that.
And just for like the listeners who might not be familiar, Megaton was you were the publisher, where you created, I think, most of the properties in there, or
Yep.
co-created, and you published this from like 81 to 87. I think there were like 8 issues, right?
Yes. Yep, that's
all
how
right.
it worked. Then there was the Megaton Explosion was a Who's Who book, and a couple years later, we tied things up. There was a Christmas special with stuff that had been started when I gave up.
And the Who's Who had the first appearance of Youngblood, Rob Liefeld's Youngblood.
Well, it was probably the second appearance. I think the first appearance was probably in an ad in Megaton 7 or 8.
Gotcha.
There was an ad. It was going to be a one shot. We did the 8 issues of the black and white book, and the big plan after that, the Megaton Explosion, was the book was going to split up into individual books, color books. I mean, the black and white. I mean, at that point, I had known all along that a superhero book ought to be in color, but we just figured at that point we'd take a shot and do some color books and hope that would, help the sales and everything. We had plans. Most of the characters in the explosion, it was promo type stuff. Somewhere there's a promo for the individual books. There was supposed to be a Megaton Volume 2, which would have been just the Megaton character, and Vanguard Outpost Earth. And there were 2 issues of a book called Ram that came out in 2 issues, color issues. No, they weren't color. Of Wild Man. And
Berserker, right?
Well, Berserker came out a little bit later.
Okay.
That came out through Caliber Press in the early 80s or early 90s. But there was supposed to be, the one issue that was supposed to be Youngblood was actually solicited, and orders for everything came in at that point, right about the 2000 mark, which was it was very disappointing, especially for stuff that was supposed to be color. And at that point, the printers wanted to print a 10,000 minimum print run. Yeah, so it was. If I was still doing the single book, I could have kept on going, but to have all that stuff in production, and I just okay, it was the black and white explosion, the glut, and it was a different market back then. It was there wasn't even a diamond previews. I mean, you'd print up however many copies, 1,000 copies of a flyer and send them to the different distributors. I mean, Diamond was distributing, and Capital was distributing out of Madison, Wisconsin, and
Did you do a lot of like mail order, like ads in magazines, or
just
was it
some?
mostly?
I mean, there was a certain amount of trading off with people, and I think most of the advertising I did was probably in the CBG.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to me, like, when I look at Megaton 1 and even 1, 2, the first few issues, how kind of professional it looks from coming out from like a 22 or 23-year-old guy, just jumping into it. It's amazing how you got such great artists. I guess, like you said, no one could break in. And could you talk a little bit about how you bumped into Erik Larsen and Rob Liefeld and Angel Medina? And because it's just amazing to me. I mean, you look at those you look at each issue of Megaton, you know, Frank Fosco, all these guys went on to have, you know, professional careers and be successful at it, and it's pretty
I
amazing.
marvel at it sometimes myself. Well, the first issue, like I said, Mike Gustovich was the first guy that signed up, and even at that point, I mean, he went on, he inked at Marvel and probably DC for a long time after that. Mm-hmm. I was just a big fan. Him I actually met. He was one of the few people that I met. I mean, after that, Chris Ecker, who I've got a 30-year comics relationship with, he was in the first issue there. He worked on the Crusader character, which evolved over time into the Night Watchman at Big Bang.
Yeah.
Him I knew. He was local. He was actually managing the comic shop I was going to. Everyone else, I think, or just about everyone else, I saw their work in advertisements or other stuff, you know.
Right.
In issue number 1 there, Butch Geis, I saw an ad for the which convention, the in South Carolina, the con still goes on. I'm sorry, but I haven't.
Heroes Con, or
probably, yeah. I saw an ad that he did, you know, the main artwork on it, and I just sent off a letter and asked if, you know, he'd be interested in doing a story, and he had been working on damn, I'm too old. My brain's shot.
It's all right.
The Crusaders. It was a book called the Crusaders. He did one issue, and after he did Megaton after that. Frank Fosco was a local Chicago guy, but he lived, a good hour and a half away from me. I saw his work. There was a magazine called Triad that was a.
Yeah, he talked to us about that. That was pretty interesting too.
Yeah,
he showed us samples of that.
Yeah, a record market magazine, with, you know, and they had done a comics issue, and I saw his work in there. Was real impressed. I mean, it was actually E3, and you know, usually that kind of stuff you'll see somebody doing Superman or Batman, and yeah, it was a real great looking Kirby-ish character and all. And I tracked him down and sent him a letter, and a friend of Butch Geis's did the first version of Berserker, but it wasn't what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of scrapped that. There's a whole story done, but I scrapped that. I got in contact with Ken Landgraf, who had been publishing. I mean, he was one of the few people publishing back then. I think Larry Houston was publishing stuff. Ken Landgraf was publishing. I'm not sure if Cerebus was out yet. And ElfQuest, when in Richard Pini, that was really the independent.
Not was like the darling.
What's that?
I was just gonna say that was like the darling, the indie darling.
Yeah,
ElfQuest.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what in the independent market was when I first started off. And some reason I got in touch with Ken Landgraf, and he pitched in at the last minute on the first Berserker story. And I think it was. I mean, I was familiar with Erik Larsen's stuff. I had picked up that I had ordered the copies of the Ajax Comics stuff.
Oh yeah, Prism and
Graphic Fantasy.
Graphic Fantasy, yeah.
Liked it a whole bunch, but it wasn't actually me that contacted him. I think Ken Landgraf was going to work with me on the Vanguard stuff and was having trouble, and he just. I talked to him, and he said, I'm having trouble. So I talked with Erik Larsen and told him you'd be calling him, which threw me, because I kind of thought, I mean, Erik was already publishing and writing and stuff, but called him up, and he was up for doing it. And, the concept and all was pretty much my idea. He redesigned the character. it was a much his version of the character was much cooler than what I was coming up with at that point.
And it's amazing because the design has stuck. I mean, you look at Dragon in the Megaton issues, and he's evolved, but Erik's design of Vanguard you just hit the nail on the head right off the bat because it really hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't. I mean, the only thing, the back cover on, I think it was number 2. I went the first time Vanguard was in color. I I carried the blue all the way up into his face.
Yeah, I remember seeing that reprinted.
Yeah, Erik, that pissed Erik. He's like, he looks like a big Smurf. He wasn't going to do him if that was going to stay the coloring. I mean, somewhere I've got probably 20, 30 sheets of Xeroxes where Erik was going through and doing just different color designs on the characters. And arg, you know, and we just basically ended up with the Superman type colors anyway. And that was why I tried the blue face, just so it wasn't basically, you know, Superman uniform, but he really didn't like that, so I was like, okay, I wasn't that wedded to it, you know. So
right. What was, you know, when you were writing Vanguard and the concept of Vanguard, I'm taking it as, you know, he's supposed to be like what if Superman just didn't look human? Is that what you were going for, or? To
a degree, yeah. I mean, that's always been. He was kind of the Superman character, strange visitor from another planet, and at the same time, he was kind of a goofball. And
yeah, he's a brilliant character. It's a great character. I'm glad Erik kind of pushed it to bring him into the, you know, his Savage Dragon universe, and we've been able to see this character evolve and develop, and, you know, be able to read his adventures every so often. It's really
fun
cool
to be able to write him every so often. It is. It's a very fun character.
Of all your Megaton kind of characters, who's your favorite character that you've created?
Gosh, that's like picking your favorite kid, you know. I mean, out of the Megaton, I couldn't. I mean, there's something about all of them. I have always liked the Megaton character.
Mm-hmm.
Vanguard, I've got the biggest track record with him.
Right.
And that one comes easiest. But I always liked Berserker.
Mm-hmm.
And I always liked Etherian, you know. I mean, those are the 4 that always appealed to me most. I mean, most of the other ones didn't get defined very well. The last story in Megaton number 1 was a sword and sorcery type character that I always thought was a good concept and character, and someday may revisit it, possibly, you know, as a prose story.
Yeah.
But I couldn't say just one, because I'm pretty deeply attached to all of them and pretty proud of all of them, for that matter.
Yeah. I've noticed that you, I think it was like 6 months ago, we all noticed that you put up a Megaton official website. Is there anything behind that, or, I mean, are we going to see anything down the pipeline, or is that just kind of like something fun to put up?
Very possible. I was taking some website design classes, and for one of the projects, I decided it was a good time to put some of that stuff together. So built it for the one class, and since I had it, I decided it was time to post it. There's a possibility of I mean, at this point, I'd like to digitize it all, get it all scanned in and colored, and reprinted in one form or another. I don't know about one issue, because there's a lot of pages, you know, whether there be a Megaton issue or you know, strictly a Vanguard one. But that's down the line. We're working on a possible Megaton project of some sort.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's the 3D stuff that's on the site, the last page, I believe, you know. And there were two issues of Vanguard that were done that were never put out. I would love to get those out there in some form, just because Steve Adams, you know, took the time to draw them and all. It's pretty fun stuff.
Cool.
And
I'd love to see, like, go ahead. Sorry, Adam.
No, I was just gonna say, and that was for people who might not know, but that was going to be for the Outpost Earth, the spin-off of Megaton that you were just talking about, and the recent issue of Savage Dragon that reprinted the first Vanguard story. The cover on the Vanguard side, that was going to be the cover for the first issue of Vanguard Outpost Earth.
That's true, yes.
That's awesome.
That's cool to know.
Let's see, you asked before. I mean, Angel Medina, I'd actually first run an Angel again. I mean, at a Chicago con somewhere, and I think I watched as he went through a line, you know, and showed his portfolio to probably Marvel or DC, and you know, they told him do this and do that, and I fell in love with his stuff looking at it, and then lost track of him right there. It wasn't till the next year that I think I was sitting at a table and he brought his stuff up, and I was like, "You're the guy! You're the guy I've been looking for a year." And wow. And it turned out, I mean, he lived I don't know, 20, 25 minutes away, so it was nice and close.
Yeah.
Collaborating with him. Richard Grass Green he's a guy that went right back to the early days of comic fandom in the early 60s. And I think he was a friend of Chris's. I think I met him through Chris and got real tight. I mean, he lived in Chicago, and I spent quite a bit of the Megaton years with him. He did a lot of the lettering and whatever, and that he was just a great guy to work with. And Rob Liefeld was a fan. Rob was, I think, 15 years old.
Yeah, I was gonna say he must have been.
He must have been crazy, I guess.
He wasn't even driving yet. Yeah, he was just a great guy. I mean, he was very excited. His earlier stuff was a little rough, but we probably talked a lot, maybe for a year. I don't really know. Somehow he was in the Chicago area visiting somebody or the other, so I met up with him, and his stuff kept getting better and better. And
it must have been amazing to see, you know, going from this 15-year-old kid to, like, you know, this young superstar, and being like, I remember when this was like a little scrappy kid that was just, you know, pestering me, and now he's doing Levi commercials.
It was very weird. I mean, because, you know, like I said, I quit banging my head against the wall in about 87 and just took time off from comics. Just said, okay, no, you know, I had all these people, all these artists. It was hard. I mean, a lot of them were going right on, you know, I mean, out of issue, the first issue, I mean, Butch Geist was off to Marvel, and, geez, I don't know. I mean, it was tough. I mean,
yeah, I
was just replacing guys every issue, and almost afraid. I mean, Erik would have drawn everything, but I was, of all of them, I figured he was going to be gone next, you know, and
he
was around for 4 issues, but I was hesitant to have him be the face of it, because I knew he was going to be gone, and everyone's, oh, don't worry, when I get work, I'll be still doing stuff for you. And
yeah, right.
I was paying like $20 a page, and I knew, I mean, from the first guy that went, you know, and they'd be like, oh, I'll do something, but it's hard to take time out to work for that. So
right.
Yeah, so I knew, you know, it was just a tough situation to be in, and I didn't expect them to keep doing, you know, work for next to nothing.
Right. I mean, like you said though, Megaton is a big legacy there of all the guys, and I think at one point Rob Liefeld called you the grandfather of Image Comics.
Yeah,
Is that
that was him. Yeah, I mean, basically, just because I mean, he and Erik came from there, and
Angel Medina did a long run of Spawn.
Yeah, that's true.
And
I heard Larry Martyr basically say the same thing. It's like you were the kind of the shadow behind all of these guys that everybody came to know.
Some of them, anyways. Yeah, Larry was a good friend of Chris Ecker's, you know. So, yeah, I mean, everything seemed kind of tied together one way or the other. There, it was real fun to watch. Yeah, because I quit in '87 and I took 4 or 5 years off, and in that time, yeah, I was seeing Rob on TV, and I was aware of the stuff they were all doing at the different companies, you know, and Rob was at a show again in Chicago, and I went to see him. He was excited to see me and was just talking about leaving Marvel, you know, where they were talking about starting their own company, and really that's when I got back in. I mean, just they were talking about having me do some stuff, and that's how it worked out, you know.
So can you talk to us about how they approached you, Erik? I know, you know, so Erik has Dragon, and it's a different version of Dragon, but he also wants to pull Vanguard in, and you're kind of a co-owner, creator. How did that all pan out?
It worked out pretty good. Could have worked out better. Yeah, I mean, stuff, you know, the initial sales were through the roof there. And Erik was, you know, planning a number of different ongoing series or miniseries and whatever, and asked, you know, he liked Vanguard. He had enjoyed working with me, and just asked if I'd be interested in doing a Vanguard book, and I said, you know, sure. And cool. Yeah, I mean, what worked against it, Vanguard was supposed to be the first, the first miniseries, the first series. It was set up to be an ongoing series at first, and it was supposed to be the first of his peripheral books.
Right.
But the initial artist it didn't work out on there.
That was Tom Coker, or
yeah, Tom, somewhere along the line. I mean, he did the 0 issue and the first issue, I believe.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, it just wasn't working out, and so we had to replace him, and then it ended up being a different artist every issue, which was real great for me. I got to work with a bunch of guys, but I think it worked against finding an audience. I mean, that was just, you know, into what was going on in that particular book, you know?
Yeah, I think it was a little tough. I mean, you go from one style to another style, but the other thing that's amazing on this, it's almost like Megaton, where each artist went on to become a superstar, you know, like Joe Mad and, you know,
Jason
Rick
Pearson.
Leonardi, Jason Pearson. It's amazing that, you know, you've got to work with all these guys and they're kind of like...
That's it, and then Angel again in there. So, yeah, like you said, it was great for me, but I thought it was a little bit tough. Just in that people didn't know what they were going to be getting that issue. I mean, I was the constant, but it...
Yeah, Vanguard looks a little different each issue, too, and it gets tough.
Well, also, it's got to be hard for the artist or the reader when it's a character that they might not be as familiar with, and so they didn't have, like, for one thing, the, like, Vanguard size nailed down. And so he's like changing size from issue to issue, and it's like the first handful of issues of the book, and so it must have been hard for people to kind of get a handle on, like, oh, I'm not really sure like what this is, well, you know, exactly how he's supposed to look even. And
yeah, I would think so. You know, and like I said, I treated him as a little bit goofy, generally not as goofy as Erik did. But still, not. he wasn't Superman, that's for sure.
So, Gary, when this stuff was happening with the launch of Vanguard, when in relation to that, what did you start Big Bang Comics? Was that like before or during the same time?
Probably during the same time. Like I said, I took those 4 or 5 years off and went in, and it was just exciting to see all the, I had sort of paid attention, but to see just, how big some of these guys had gotten, Rob on TV and stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I think somewhere along the line I was in Detroit and talked to Caliber Press about doing the Berserker book. I think in the meantime, Chris had published one issue of Battle Axe magazine, which had the first segment of the story done by Angel Medina, and the magazine didn't go anywhere. But like I said, I liked the character a whole bunch. Took it, and Caliber wanted to go with it, so started working on the Berserker book. And the backups in Berserker were the initial Big Bang ones. Berserker number 1 was Night Watchman story. Number 2 was Ultraman, which Ultraman had been in Megaton as Ultraman, and I figured I better change the name at that point. And yeah, I mean, so it was same period. I mean, I was working on the one, and we were working on Vanguard, and Vanguard, we just decided to stop it with issue 6. I mean, it's like I said, it was supposed to be the first miniseries. It came out to be the 4th one out, and at that point, the bloom was kind of off the rose, where numbers were the first issue sold, I don't know, 100,000, something like that, 120,000. And yeah, and it's like 6 issues of that. I mean, the royalties on that first book were, for me, I mean, were great. It was like 20 grand, but I think that was the only royalty I saw off it, because numbers were dropping so much.
Yeah,
and
everyone was going after that first collector's issue.
Well, that's it. Yeah, the books were selling so much, selling so high that Erik was paying large page rates. We had the main story and the backup story, and the backup artists weren't getting royalties, so they were getting almost like a double page rate.
Gotcha.
So yeah, once the numbers started dropping off, the money just wasn't there. I mean, everything was selling so much. I mean, the printing was real high quality stuff. They were paying top dollar for everything, and early on, there was money everywhere, but it didn't take too long before the
bottom fell out. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, just for our listeners, Big Bang through Image lasted, I think, 35 issues?
Something like that.
And that was kind of like your ode to your childhood comics, right? I mean, I have all 35. I enjoy them. And it seems like they start off with like an ode to the old DC Silver Age, and then you throw some like Bronze Age, but it's all kind of like ode to the classic kind of comics in each kind of era, and they're really
exactly
fun.
What it was, the first, I mean, we did the backups in the first 4, the first 4 issues of Berserker were all Big Bang, and they were pretty much golden age type stuff, and it's like, and the Berserker was a tough sell. I mean, Angel was doing the covers on those, and they were just beautifully violent things. But I kept hearing from dealers that people that loved the covers thought the interiors were too comic booky like, and people that would have liked the insides thought that the covers were too graphic and whatever. But what I heard from everybody was, for whatever reason, was crazy about the backup stories, the Night Watchman, and we played it like it was really an old character that we picked up from somewhere. We figured it'd be obvious that it was, Batman and Superman and that, but
right.
People were excited about it, so we eventually talked Caliber into to doing a miniseries, and at first they were reluctant. They didn't see why anyone would want to read that. And finally, when Image announced 1963, and the market was excited, then Caliber was like, "Oh, we get it now." so yeah, the first the miniseries through Caliber, the first issue and the Zero issue were both Golden Age issues, and then the first 3 issues, 1, 2, and 0 were Golden Age, and then the third issue was a Silver Age type story, and the fourth one was Modern. And the fourth issue was a little bit snake bit. The guy that was supposed to draw it backed out on it, and the replacement, we found that the stuff was just a little bit busy, and the first issues Caliber had printed on white paper where we wanted newsprint, and when you got to the Modern stuff, which should have been on white paper, then they went to newsprint and the colors just died. I was like, and so at that point, I mean, when Erik invited us over to Image, Erik was a real big fan of the Big Bang stuff. They just said, let's stay away from the Modern stuff, because it was looking too much like some of the stuff out of Extreme, where it was supposed to be over the top. Everything piled in as to what the Modern comics were going for. I mean, it was, I don't know. Anyways, we ended up staying away from the Modern.
They were like, we've already got that. We're already doing that.
Pretty much. So the point of a lot of it had been to get to doing the latest incarnation of these characters, which we never did. So.
Yeah. I remember reading like Big Bang 1 with like the CC Beck style Mighty Man, and just being like blown away. Like, who's the artist? Bill Fugate?
Bill Fugate. Yeah.
Which he just does it so well. And then you read, I think it's issue 3 of Big Bang, and there's like a letter from Jim Steranko giving you props, and it's just like, it gives you like chills to read. It's like, it's amazing.
It was amazing time. Yeah, Bill, he died last month.
Yeah. No kidding. Had no idea.
Yeah, he and I
That's
were
horrible.
Yeah, he was I don't know, just about my age anyway. Yeah, he had cancer.
Wow.
And
I was gonna say, if there was any way we could get more of those stories of, possibly as backups or whatever, but I had no idea. I absolutely love like the Thunder Girl stories, anything that's in that CC Beck style is like,
yeah, me too. Especially by him. He was
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was special. He's another guy that when I started working with him, I saw an ad he had done for probably either a comic shop or a show up in Minneapolis, and just wrote to him and said, this stuff looks like CC Beck to me. Have any interest in doing that kind of stuff? And
they're amazing.
Yeah, it worked. No, he and I had been working on a Mighty Man story, hopefully for Dragon 200. And we had worked out the script, but I don't. If he had started on it, I never saw any of it. It was called The Voice from, or it is called The Voice from Valhalla, and he's fighting a Valkyrie character, slightly tied into to Thor. Thor appears shortly, not Marvel's Thor, but the Golden Age Thor and all. So
right.
Yeah, it's too bad. I was hoping there'd be another one of those, and if I find someone else that can draw it, I'll try to get it done. But I mean, basically there are 3 guys that did that sort of stuff at Big Bang, and he was the top. So
yeah, that first issue of the Image book was just kind of a revelation to me, because when I saw it on the shelf, I had been aware of Big Bang before that, but I didn't make the connection. I didn't know that it was you. And then I recognized Mighty Man on the cover, and I saw the Image logo, and I was like, huh, like this is like related to, obviously this is related to this other thing. But then I read it, and I was just so blown away the whole book was really good, but I really just echo what Craig said about Bill's stuff, and he just played it totally straight, like the Captain Marvel-esque Mighty Man. It doesn't read like a parody. It reads just perfectly like one of those lovely stories, and you pick it up and read it and you go, this really could have been from another time. And
Definitely.
I thought that was one of the really most perfectly executed kind of if that's what you guys were setting out to do.
That's what we set out to do. It was never meant to be any kind of a parody, more of a pastiche, or we thought of it as ghosting. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
any of that stuff, I said I tried to write it in the style of whoever was writing it back then, and tried to find whoever would draw it in those kind of styles, and some of them are better than others, and some of them ended up
sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Some of them ended up doing too much swiping and whatever, which worked against it. But too many people came to me and they all wanted to do their version of their favorite story, and
right.
I'm like, no, that's not where we want to go. We want it to be like a brand new issue that for someone who's read every issue of, say, Batman, this is like a new one,
Like it's one that hasn't been discovered in the vault. Like you just unearth it, and it's what I really loved was one of those early Image issues was the one where Silver Age Shadowhawk teams up with Silver Age Night Watchman, because they're both like Silver Age Batman, and
sure,
that was hysterical, but not like it was not self-consciously that way. It was just of course these guys would team up. It's these two big heroes, and
Tom King would draw like that Dick Sprang kind of look, which was awesome.
Hearing you guys talk about all these comics, which unfortunately I've never read, really makes me want to read them.
Yeah, they're. And you feel like you're like when you pick up one of these issues, there's so much to read. Like you got the letters page, you got like 3 different stories, and then even you want to read all the ads because you just get a kick out of it. I mean, there's ads like calling all red-blooded Americans.
What you mean, like
join the Junior Watchmen of America, and it's like you get a real mask.
Sort of thing, like it's a real silver or golden age comic.
Yep. Yeah, it's just it's fun, and the letters pages are fun. I mean, it takes you a solid chunk of time to get through it, and it's just great. There's a couple issues besides the kind of CC Beck Mighty Man. I really like issue 7, which partly because it's a Mighty Man, part of the character, but because it's such a good kind of like Jim Starlin type 70s comic. It's just amazing. That blew me away, and then it's got the Night Watchman Dick Sprang type strip in the back, and then the other comic that really blew me away is issue 8 of Big Bang Comics, and it's Mr. US.
I wanted to bring that up too.
Yeah, it's all I don't know who Mark Lewis is, and I guess he pencils the whole thing, but he does an amazing kind of Kirby riff where he's got the old school 1940s type Captain America, like the way the panels are, the circular panels and everything. It's just it's amazingly done, and then it goes all the way up to modern age type take on this character, and it looks just like a Rob Liefeld kind of character. And it's
that one, especially that page where you just turn it over. I mean, I think between the one page or the couple of them where it just you end up almost turning the whole book over.
You turn it a couple times. Sorry,
go ahead.
The Kirby Simon pages are amazing.
Yeah.
Like he just nails it. He nails it so well. And the same thing with even like as you go through each kind of decade, he nails the style, and it's all by the same artist. And like you said, you get to the 90s kind of Image years, and you get the real Liefeld look, and he nails that style too, and nails the panels on that. Like you have to turn the book sideways, and you get the big splash, and it's a great book. you guys listening out there, go through your back issue bins and find these Big Bang comics.
I might have to
a
make
blast.
an attempt at that. I do have a question though, Gary.
Okay.
Do you have all the reprint rights to all this material? Is it all basically yours?
Uh,
I'm just curious because
Not all of it. I mean, a lot of it. A lot of them are Big Bang characters. There's certain stuff that isn't mine. I mean, we've signed a deal with Pulp 2.0, and they're going to be doing a lot of reprints. And
Awesome.
oh, cool. Okay.
I mean, the first issue coming out is going to be the Night Watchman Graveyard Shift, which is the Sin City-ish version. I mean, it's
kind of like the gritty modern take on Night Watchman.
yes. I mean, yeah, it's somewhere between Dark Knight Returns and Sin City. And that's going to be the first one. That's going to be followed up by 2 issues of all the Night Watchman stories, or just about all the Night Watchman stories. And then there'll be an issue of the Bill Fugit stuff, Thunder Girl, Mighty Man, and then an issue of Ultraman. And then there's going to be an issue of Jeff Weigel's Sphinx character. Those are the initial books.
Well, that's
when can we start seeing the first phase of this? Is that something coming up? Or?
The Graveyard Shift book ought to be soon. I know they took pre-publication orders on it.
I saw the link, them posting on Facebook and stuff. Do you know if the pre-order is still open for that?
You'd almost have to check and see. I haven't heard anything recently on that, so I'm not sure.
Right.
I'm sort
we
of
need to post a link on that. Let people.
Yeah, there's the Big Bang website, and I think there might be a link on there. I've got to redo that website, but
yeah, there's a link on there. Everybody should check it out at bigbangcomics.com, I believe.
Yep, that's it.
In addition to megatoncomics.com.
Yes.
Nice. Now, I think we're at like 50 minutes around. Do we want to start talking about more of the modern Vanguard stuff? And
sure.
And, there's a lot to go over. We just, you just did almost a year-long serial in Savage Dragon, which
yeah, maybe
we all really enjoyed.
Well, that's good. I'm always glad to hear that. That's always fun. I mean, working, basically with Frank Fosco. I mean, Erik pretty much keeps hands off and lets us do what we want. So yeah, that's been a lot of fun. I mean, there was the E3 and 14 issues or 14
That's
chapters
right. Yep.
before that. So yeah, it was a good, probably close to 3 years working. It was very fun.
I'm actually curious about the E3N project. I know we talked to Frank about it when we had him on the show, but that was a while ago, so my memory's not so great. How did that come about? You guys, did Erik request it, or did you guys offer it up to him, or how'd that come about?
I'm really not sure. I think it probably came about. I mean, Frank and Erik are tighter than Erik and I these days. He's been so busy the last bunch of years. I just try not to bother him, And
if you need to get a hold of, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Yeah,
I was gonna say, if you need to get an answer out of Erik for something and he's not emailing you back, ask Frank to ask him.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it's not that I have problems with getting him to respond. I don't like to bother him. I mean, during a big period of that time, I mean, he was the publisher and everything else, and
yeah, that's right.
I'm the kind of I like to call up and just shoot the breeze and blah blah.
Oh yeah, no, I don't mean you. I mean anybody. I think that's the way to get sometimes to get answers on stuff.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I just don't. I think it was just. I'm really not sure how it came up. Again, I mean, most of the guys from Megaton are very proud of the fact that they all came out of there.
Yeah,
And yeah, it started off. It was going to be a 3-issue miniseries, and it was never solicited as a miniseries. the orders on everything were going down and down, and
Yeah.
and that's where it just turned into turning it into backups, which it broke up pretty nicely into 6 and 7 page increments. The E3 and stuff. I mean, and it just kind of lucky how that worked, and it was nice because it was in color. Otherwise, it probably would have come out in black and white. Toward the end, the Big Bang stuff was, selling pretty crummy, and I no longer had the disposable income that I had way back during Megaton in the early days of Big Bang. So,
right.
I wasn't prepared to go on the hook that if it didn't make the money to cough up a check to Image anymore. So.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's how that sort of started, and then when that was done, Frank was still looking to do stuff, and Erik said, "Geez, it's been 20 years, and all the other time's been passing on all the other characters, and Vanguard just kind of shows up once in a while, and wasn't progressing anywhere, and he was concerned that Vanguard was the Deus Ex Machina, where Vanguard would pop up at the last minute and help out or teleport him away,
dragging off of out of trouble or whatever.
Yeah, so it was like he kind of wanted to tie it all up and eventually move Vanguard off of there, so that easy avenue wasn't there. So that's sort of how the Vanguard stuff came about, to be tied up. We had done the first 6 issues and then the second miniseries, so it was nice to be able to go back and tie up a lot of the loose ends, maybe not all of them.
I really enjoyed the serial aspect of it, of having, I don't know, what was it, like 6 pages per issue or something like that. And you were able to kind of, it felt like you were reading a 22-page story on some of these, not in a bad way, you felt like you read a full beginning to end story, and it was amazing like that. I really enjoyed the kind of shorter pages, getting to the point, in and out, getting the action, and you managed to tie up almost every issue where you had a one and done story, but it was still an reaching arc.
Well,
and go ahead, sorry.
No, yeah, I mean that was what we tried to do. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the first one, the E3 and stuff broke down kind of nicely where it worked out that way, but on the Vanguard stuff, they were actually plotted to be complete in one issue, and kind of lead you to the next ones and all.
And at the same time, you had to almost tie in your story with the ongoing Savage Dragon story. How did that work out for you? Was that a chore? Or?
No, it wasn't too bad. Every once in a while we weren't quite in sync, but it worked out. It worked out nicely. I don't think it messed up anything that we were doing. We kind of were working toward the same goal and knew that by this issue the invasion was going to start, and in this issue there was going to be the conversation between Vanguard and Dragon, and I was real happy the way it all tied up pretty nicely.
Well, and it was good because it's like there were a lot of characters brought back, a lot of the old cast. I mean, there aren't that many Vanguard, issues out there. I mean, what is there, like 12 kind of standalone issues, maybe?
10, yeah.
And you were able to kind of bring back his rogues gallery, which is larger than some characters that have been around 20 years, I feel like. But you were able to tie them into the story, and it didn't feel forced at all. And I just thought, I know talking to all the guys on the Savage Dragon forums and here on the FINcast, we all thought, it was one of the best Vanguard stories, or even Savage Dragon type stories. And it's just really well done. And Frank's art just seemed to get better each issue, and his covers were blowing us away. They really kind of whet your appetite for the story, and each cover was better than the next cover, and just amazed me that how little covers I'd seen by him before this series, and I was glad that you guys got that back cover to
that was great. That was great. Yeah, I mean, it was real cool, the early ones when they were doing the flip book, but I could see where that was going to be trouble.
I missed
Oh
the
yeah,
flip
they
book.
stack them. Yeah.
Yeah, people were
Yeah.
stacking them wrong, and people didn't realize it was dragging and all. But it was, yeah, all the way along. It was fun working on those 3 years worth of things. Yeah, I was just a little afraid that those 6-page stories was all plot. I mean, generally not all action, but I mean, probably not as much a characterization as I would have preferred. But at the same time, out of the whole bunch of them, there's very little, there was no room to do splash pages. It was, I kept feeling like I was sticking Frank with lots going on every page, but I didn't see too many ways around it.
He seemed to have handled it pretty well. I thought it wasn't too dense. I thought it works out pretty well.
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah, I mean, that was always, what we were aiming for. So
yeah, and Frank he does an awesome job also with his backgrounds and making you really feel like your characters are in Chicago or wherever. It was just a really well done job.
Yeah,
I'm glad that you guys had that opportunity.
Yeah, me too. I was real happy, and a lot of the stuff I just deferred to him. I said, "You're doing so much more work on it than me." If he had a real preference for something, then I tried to go that direction.
How do your scripts usually go? I mean, do you guys just do it like the Marvel method, or you have like typed up kind of scripts for him, or I mean, how do you usually work that out?
It's somewhere between a plot and a script. I mean, it'll say page 1, and on a splash, it might spell it out, and this is what's going on, and logo here, and title here, but then after that, it's generally just it's one line for what I see as one panel. So generally there'll be somewhere between 4 and 8 lines or paragraphs, for say page 2, and the storytelling's all up to him. But I mean, a lot of the dialogue will be roughed in, so he knows what kind of room to leave. In the past, I've worked with guys that if there was no dialogue, they weren't leaving room for me to go and put it in. So, he and I have worked so much over the years. It's a real nice working relationship.
Yeah. And with this serial too, you not only did you bring in kind of all the existing Vanguard universe characters, you added a bunch, and within this one serial, you gave us a couple of real lasting guys like Thram and Brackus. Brackus with his attitude, and Lurch, who was didn't speak a lick until this series and became a fan favorite, I think, within these pages, which was really cool with his Hawaiian shirt and stuff. And
yeah, I love the Hawaiian shirt.
It was like every kind of every volume, if you want to call it a volume of Vanguard, it seemed like Lurch was kind of getting a little more and more independent, and then you finally with this serial, he's kind of like his own character now that thinks and talks on his own.
Yeah, that's where I had been going with him all along. So
it
was nice to get there.
And it was a surprise to see like the Amok character, go from just kind of like a brutal kind of villain to like an actual supporting cast member. Is kind of the Hulk kind of supporting cast member, which was really neat. That was a surprise to see him appear in the pages, and I think he bring some good action to it and some comic relief to it. And when he's eating like the Tyranian eggs or whatever, it was a good little panel there. I really enjoyed that, but I was really nervous. I was really nervous. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just saying I was really nervous reading this, thinking that this was almost like a Vanguard swan song, that he was going to die in the end, because it just seemed like all these characters were being introduced. For some reason, in the back of my head, I thought, he's finishing them off, and I was glad to see that. Hopefully this isn't spoilers for anyone because the issue's been out for a while, but I was glad to see that he survives and, there's room left for more adventures. So hopefully we do get to see some more adventures because I know, Vanguard's up there with, some of the favorites of the characters in Savage Dragon.
Well, anytime I'm ready. Yeah, the main thing was, to get him away for a while, and there's tons of stuff we could do. Other side of the universe. So
he's got to go meet the dragon people at some point.
Well, that's it. That, and there's the Terranians. There's still some of those out there, and there's got to be survivors of his own planet. Not a lot of them. They're people out there, and all kinds of stuff.
And speaking of the other Calyptons, it's such a weird dynamic in Vanguard because you read it and his people aren't necessarily good guys. I mean, they enslaved a Mux kind of whole race. They're kind of militant type guys. They're not good guys. They could almost be considered villains probably to a lot of people.
Yeah, well, and I always looked at it that way. I mean, they were fighting the Terranians who were real bad guys. So Vanguard's people were kind of the lesser of two evils, and he never really wanted them to come to Earth because he realized that. He may not have realized it at first, but
they'd show up and ruin a good thing.
Yeah. Well, that's it. They were, pretty much coming and got to make it worth their time. So they'd come and strip mine the place and take, whatever to make it worth their while to have come.
Maybe you can kind of explain this a little bit. I know we've had some discussions on this. The Tyranian Combine, is that? I believe that's what they're called, right? Tyrus Combine.
Yeah.
Now, I know in I forget which issue of Megaton, when we kind of got a glimpse of them, it looked like it was like a bunch of different alien races. Yeah. And then in this newest, the Savage Dragon stuff, it seems like they're just kind of made up of those bug guys plus maybe those the tech robot guys.
Right.
Was that a conscious decision, or in your mind are they just kind of one sect of the Combine, or?
Well, the whole point of being a Combine was there was a whole bunch of different races that were out there, but. Yeah, because we were doing 6 pages at a time, we just figured we'd stick with the one race,
mm-hmm.
And they kind of ended up on Earth by accident anyway, so it was really 1 or 2 ships that came there, and they, the way they were set up, they were, kind of multiplying and multiplying. So, somewhere out there, the Combine probably still exists in one form or another.
Gotcha.
I like the whole... Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like the whole idea of the potential of what Vanguard stories could be in the future, like of him, traveling space, trying to find... other Calyptons that are still alive on other planets, or possibly on, Tyrus Combine prison worlds or whatever. Just you could pretty much do whatever you want in a open-ended, like I'm traveling through space kind of concept. And you're talking about this sort of ending the Vanguard's story that had been sort of the status quo for the 20 years since Image started, but it really even 30 years if you're counting back from Megaton, and him being like, I'm here to protect Earth from the Tyrus Combine, and then the invasion happens, and so let's set him off on this on a new direction. And just the idea of him spending his time flying through space instead of being Earth's protector now is really exciting to me. And so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what you do with that, regardless of, when it comes together or what. But there's just so many possibilities there. It's really fun.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I never thought about killing the character off. I think Frank and some of the other guys might have thought I was serious about killing Wally off in the one issue, but yeah, I don't know. After all this time, I mean, to get a chance to write those guys, I had a hard time just saying, well, we'll kill this guy, and
Yeah.
he killed his sister off real quick. But the other guy, I figured it made for a different sort of people traveling around with him, as opposed to 3 guys with guns or whatever. So
Well, and to what Craig was saying about tying in some of the villains and characters from previous Vanguard stories, I was just really impressed by how many of those threads you wove into this. Like, there was sort of the basic goal that you were just talking about of what the story was supposed to accomplish, and also like syncing it up with what was going on in Dragon. But then also it's sort of the sequel to the stuff that was happening in E3 and incorporating those characters. But then to have all these extra players come in and out, and it seems, it works so well. Like in the second chapter when Modem shows up, at the end of that story, I didn't think that we would be seeing more of Modem. Like I thought, they've taken care of her. She's in a tube now on his ship, and I wasn't expecting her to become a cast member and for her character to develop further and
become a good guy basically.
Yeah, exactly. And by the time they leave and go off, their little motley crew is a perfect kind of dynamic of all these different types of characters who are from these different points in Vanguard's life and wildly different personalities. You could see like a really good sort of team dynamic, or at least like a group centered around Vanguard, like a book that those kind of relationships almost write themselves.
Well, and at the same time, not the super friends, because they don't all get along. I mean, Baracus gets along with nobody, and
right.
Yeah,
it is amazing how it's like the end sets you up like almost like a team book, and it just leaves you wanting more. Like Adam was saying, I want to know what this dynamic is between this team. There's so many cool adventures, and when you look at the team, there's only 2 people from Earth on the team. Everyone else is an alien. It's really cool.
I'll have to start giving some thought to it.
Please do. But,
yeah, nothing would be more fun than that. So.
Yeah, it was. My hat's off to you, because that was one of the better serials / even, it's too bad the market wasn't there. It would have been an awesome, mini series, but it was one of the cooler Savage Dragon related offshoots that I've read.
Well, it was nice. I mean, that was kind of it, was to reintroduce really the whole bunch of the characters, to the people that were reading Dragon anyway, so
yeah.
I still don't know if that's enough of a market to start doing a book on. I guess I've lost my nerve as far as
trying out.
Yeah, the direct market,
Yeah,
it's
It's tough, especially with a character like Vanguard that doesn't have exposure as it is, but yet has history. So it's tough to get new readers to get invested in that, that history. And it's just too bad, because it is so good, and it should have mass market appeal for what it is, but it's just, I don't have any ideas.
It's just the state of the market now too. I think I think there's a lot of great comics out there that aren't going to get published because there's not enough people buying comics.
Yeah, that's it.
Period.
Market's shrinking. Yeah. Frank and I, we've never gone off and become big names on our own, so you can't sell a book on either of our names.
Well, I hope that you do continue to do this kind of thing, like even if it's only occasionally, and even if it's a backup or just like a one-off or whatever, and so we can, everybody can check in with these characters and we can see what's happening, and because it's not regardless of the market. I know Vanguard has fans, and I see people talking about Vanguard. I see people going, oh, I love the backup this month, and it's, I actually see a lot of people talking about that on like Facebook and Twitter, and people that aren't, regular letter hacks or members of the Savage Dragon boards or anything like that. Like, people at least know Vanguard, at least because probably a lot of people have that first issue of Vanguard from 1993 that you were talking, like a lot of people know Vanguard, and
there's 100,000 copies out there.
Yeah,
somebody's got to have them.
Yeah, and so I know that it's a beloved character, and I hope that more people will get to enjoy it. Definitely.
I do hope the backups get collected in some form in the near future.
Yeah, I'm hoping. That would be fun. Again, I mean that's probably up to Erik, and
yeah,
who knows? In one form or another. I mean, Frank was talking about doing some E3 and stuff, but I don't know whether something like that would go, just as print on demand, or
right,
a website somewhere and make it available just online for people to read it, so.
Right.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this on prior podcasts, but there's new avenues out there now, like things like Kickstarter and stuff like that.
That's true.
The digital market is growing. I should get Vanguard's full body onto Comixology at some point.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Sure.
So besides what you told us about Big Bang, do you have anything else in the pipeline, or is that about it?
Yeah, at the moment that's all I've been doing is trying to get some of the old Big Bang stuff back to where it can be reprinted and hopefully colored, some of it,
Yeah,
but
you definitely have to let us know when it gets to that point where we can get the word out, because I'd like to see that really succeed so we could get some more collections.
So you're looking to get the stuff that wasn't colored in Big Bang colored for the new reprints?
Well, I think the initial reprints are going to be black and whites. I mean, they're going to be like 200-page black and white. What do they call it? The phone
archives
book?
or
essentials,
showcases or essentials.
The Pulp 2.0 books.
Yeah, those.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the plan, which I don't know. I mean, like I said, to me, the color seems essential, but there's so much of that other stuff out there where they're reprinting it in black and white that it's not.
I don't know how much influence you have over how the book's put together, but they're using line art or they're making grayscale scans of the original, because that can make a big difference over reproduction in black and white.
What do you mean?
I mean, are they going to be reprinting the line art alone, or are they going to be
the original art, or
the color scans just turned black and white?
Oh no,
because that doesn't usually look very good.
No, it doesn't. It's going to be mostly from the line art. I mean, we're scanning from backups.
Awesome.
I think in the Night Watchman stuff, I think there's a little bit of gray shading in one of them, which people like the way it looked. But yeah, for the most part, it's just the straight line art.
Definitely have to check that out when it becomes available.
Yeah, it's keep an eye on at least the Big Bang website. I mean, there'll be some kind of a notice there, but
yeah, we'll link that for our listeners.
Cool.
Well,
I think
any other questions, Jace?
I have a million more, but I think I'd like to say maybe we can have Gary back on another time and
whenever
chew his ear off if he's open to it. But
try to get him and Gary and Frank in the same room, or at least on the same episode or something,
really cool.
maybe.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Well, I really appreciate your time talking to us. It's been a blast. We learned a lot. We really enjoyed your work.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's nice, nice to talk to somebody about it.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.
Yep. Thank you very much.
All right.
Have a good night.
All right.
Thanks.
We'll see ya.
So next episode, we should have Savage Dragon 185 in our hot hands. In fact, at the time we're recording this, it should be out in the next few hours. So that's to be looking forward to, or at least for me. I don't know about you guys who go by your paper books.
When does the digital come out? Like at what time?
About 10 a.m. I don't know, sometime
Really?
in the morning. I'm usually asleep at that time, but it's usually there when I wake up around noonish. So that's handy.
Very cool.
So what was that, Craig?
I said it's very cool. That's going to be out tomorrow. I can't wait.
Yeah, I wonder if there'll be a backup. I honestly don't know.
There's no backup this time around. Just one of those nice classic fat letter sections.
Oh, he got
Super
one.
big letter section.
It's nice to have
When
letters.
was the last time there wasn't a backup?
It's been a while,
I'd
but
check my
there's
back issues
yeah.
or the wiki. That would probably be faster. But next issue, 185, titled "The Verdict." Savage Dragon is on trial for crimes he committed when he had reverted to his Emperor Kerr persona. Now the world is his witness as the shocking verdict is read. Meanwhile, Malcolm Dragon has troubles of his own. Thunderhead and Double Page. And so yeah. Should be a interesting issue in general to see what the fate of Dragon's going to be.
Yeah, definitely.
I have my theories.
Do you want to divulge?
I think he's going to prison.
Yeah.
I think he's going to stay there for a while.
And you think like Malcolm's gonna go to him for advice, like talk to him through
the glass and the phone.
Yeah. I hope not, but I could see that happening. Should be interesting. We'll know in a few hours.
Yeah. So yeah.
It was a great episode. I had a lot of fun talking to Gary.
Yeah, that was a good time. It's always great when we have really cool creative people on. I mean, that's like in my wildest dreams, I never expected to have so many awesome people on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I say something about Gary?
Yes.
Sure.
One of the things that I really like about his writing, and we should mention that Gary's actually written, a fair amount of stuff. He also wrote Supreme for a bit before Alan Moore's run. Ninja Turtles at Image. He's a really good writer.
We didn't even hit on the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, so we'll get him on again, maybe talk about that stuff. And but what I really like about his writing is that there's a real heart to it. Like he's good at telling like comic book stories and doing the normal kind of drama and action and romance and funny stuff. Obviously, like there's a lot of funny stuff in Vanguard, but I think especially you see in the last chapter in Dragon 184, he has he's able to make a story really kind of touching without being, saccharine or sentimental. And I always really liked that about him. And I thought that set him apart from a lot of his peers. And so you should buy more of his comics and go to megatoncomics.com, bigbangcomics.com. And Gary's awesome.
Yeah, I second that.
I'll third it. What the heck?
Cool.
All right. Savage FINcast episode 16 signing out. The Savage FINcast is a part of the Gutter Trash Network and the Image Addiction family of podcasts. It can be found at either fincast.guttertrash.net or imageaddiction.net.